Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to another interpersonal discussion. My name is Jabari Superville, and I'm joined by two close friends of mine. And they're not just friends, they are people who I consider to be wise counsel, people who have proven themselves to be a safe space for me. And I know that by this discussion, the things that will be shared can hopefully impact your life and your safe space. I wasn't necessarily planning on having another discussion, but the first one, I got so much great reviews and so much great feedback from it. And everybody seemed to really enjoy what was shared, especially the relatability part of it, because it's a weird time that we live in. We all have access to each other's lives through social media, but nobody really knows what you're going through, especially with regards to any particular situation. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about daddy issues, everybody's favorite topic. And before we get into it, I want to let my co-hosts, my panelists introduce themselves. So we'll start with the dude and then go over to the gal.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Stefan Shah. I am a recent graduate of university. I'm also a Jesus lover. I love the Lord. And I have daddy issues.
Wow. He's like, in case you didn't know.
In case you didn't know,
We love it. Hi, Stefan. We love you. So my turn. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Haley Pancho, and I have daddy issues. as like a,
I feel like we should have like a fan club.
Like, hello, Haley.
Yeah, I was just very AA.
Right? Very AA vibes. Hopefully everybody laughing along with us and not like, oh.
Right.
That's so sad. Oh,
I know, right? Yes. So I am Haley. I graduated from UW St. Augustine a while ago with my bachelor's in psychology, and I'm doing my master's in clinical psych.
Ooh,
and I love
so
Jesus.
You have some educated people. Okay. She's like, I'm a Christian too. I love Jesus.
Yeah.
We clearly have some educated people here with us today. And I am really, really excited to get into this. And I just don't want to, like we make joke of it, yeah, we're going to talk about daddy issues or whatever, but we're really here to have a discussion on fatherhood, doing the inner work that it takes to have a stable relationship with your dad. So I would like to just ask Stefan, if you can go first, if you can tell me how old you are and tell me what is your relationship like with your dad, just to start off.
Okay, well, I am currently 23 years old. My relationship with my father, it's been a tricky road. So initially, my parents were married. When I was 2 is when they divorced. So for the whole period of me being a baby, my father was in my life, taking care of me there. And then, when they got divorced, at least I was told that, he's still around for like maybe 1 or 2 years. And then after a while, they just started to dwindle. So I started to see him less and less. And it got to a place where different times when he was supposed to come and pick me up, he wouldn't come. Or, I'll be so excited to go and see him and he just wasn't there. And, as a child growing up, you never really, okay, so you don't know these terms like absenteeism and, him abandoning. To him, it's just like, oh my gosh, he didn't come, why he didn't come, I wanted to go and lie with him. I wanted to go and be with him because, he's my father, somebody I want around. And, growing up, it just started to grow deeper and deeper. The time spaces from when I would see him, it started to get bigger and bigger. I started to see him less. He got married again and, he had another child and, he started to get more involved with his family, which is fine, I guess. But, at that time, I also felt as though I just started to see him less and less. And he started to stop interacting with me less and less as his family started to grow. It was rocky. And, growing into teenage years with him, I started to get really argumentative with him. I started to fight him a lot. I started to be angry. I remember one time I even called and I was just totally pissed off. I was shouting at him on the phone. And after that, he didn't talk to me for a whole year. And it's only recently we decided to reconnect. Right now, we are in an okay place. I wouldn't say it's the best, but we are in an okay place.
And Haley, what about you?
Yeah, so my parents divorced when I was 3 months old. Yeah.
How old are you now?
It was right. Yes, that's important. So I recently turned 26. Yeah, last week. Hey, August babies, shout out. Yes, so my parents divorced when I was 3 months old. My dad actually lives abroad. So I was born abroad, and then when they got divorced, I came back to Trinidad. Well, came to Trinidad. Essentially, I grew up without my dad from 3 months old. I would say we had a much better relationship when I was younger, maybe from the ages of like being a baby to like 10, even though I wouldn't see him often because, as I mentioned, he did not live in Trinidad. He doesn't live in Trinidad, but he was a lot more involved in my life back then. So, and it was also always a very big priority for my mom for us to have a relationship, him and I. So she would make sure of that. So I would visit a lot. He would come home a lot. So I would see him a lot. But I mean, obviously, being a child, you still know, obviously, that something is up and you're not seeing this person often and the person doesn't like live with you, right? But yeah, we had a really close relationship, especially when I was a lot younger. I think he was definitely my hero. He was like my favorite person, even though, like I said, I didn't live with him. I think it's honestly a little similar to Steph, where as time progressed, I think as we get older, I'm sure we probably all have similar experiences where you kind of become more aware, you're no longer a child, you're able to like notice different things. And yeah, our relationship got really rocky. Has a lot to do with not just the fact that he wasn't around, but just different things with his lifestyle and just our relationship in general. I wouldn't get into yet. Through my teenage years, we were more or less estranged. We would talk now and again, but it went from like talking for birthdays and like Father's Day and Christmas, like having those phone calls to not really having them anymore. And then it reached a point where for years we just didn't speak. I wouldn't call at all for like Father's Day and stuff like that. So like birthdays and whatnot. Fast forward to now, I think again, similar to Steph, we are in an okay place. It's not amazing, but it's definitely a step up from how it was before in the sense that we do speak. And there are phone calls now and again, and we try to check in. And yeah, that took a lot to reach that place, but I guess we'll get there. So yeah.
Yeah. And Haley, I'm interested to know, as you are growing into the latter half of your 20s.
Crying.
Do you feel like your journey into womanhood thus far has been negatively or positively affected by your relationship with your father?
I would definitely say negatively. Definitely negatively. I just think like, especially as a female, I think for anyone, it's difficult growing up without a dad. And I mean, not to get too technical, but even from like a psychology perspective, I think everybody knows, you know, the importance of the role of parents and attachments and these things. But I do think definitely as a woman, it is difficult not having that father figure in your life. Again, it is for both people. And I know you all both could probably attest to that. It's impacted me a lot, especially I think in terms of my view of relationships and men and trust and stuff like that. It's impacted me in those ways. But I mean, I can't say now, like I mentioned, I am in a better place for that. So there are some positives in terms of me being able to grow from certain things and see certain things differently.
I'm so glad that you shared that, because I really think it's important when we have these types of discussion to see both sides of the coin, from a young male's perspective and a young female's perspective. You know? And Stefan, I know when I was growing up, as I said in my blog, oftentimes I felt like I was growing into a man without a man to grow after. Do you say that you would have experienced a similar sentiment, or was that not the case?
I think definitely. I think when you don't have that prime example of how to be a man, you look for so many different definitions of how to be it.
Wow.
Or you look around, you look at like other people, you look at, I guess, parents or your friends, fathers or your friends, and you try to find like how to be a man. Especially, I guess in my case, I grew up mainly around women. So, you know, it was hard for me to really connect with masculinity at first, because it's just like, it's not there in my life. You know, like, yes, my mom would try and she would tell me certain things, you know, quote unquote, I should be doing or whatever, but it just because it's not something I would see on an everyday basis. It was extremely hard coming out on top. Well, for me at least, it was hard for me to just naturally go to that area because it just wasn't there.
And how did you deal with that? In talking specifically, your teenage years now, right? Not young adults, but your teenagers. How did you deal with that feeling of not having a domestic masculine example?
I felt that I had to prove something to people. Essentially, I had to fit into this mold, or like as soon as maybe I don't know, maybe like I would slip up, I would try my best to like over masculinate myself. I don't even know if that's a word, but basically, like I'll just try to prove myself that I am this me, that I am this man, that I am growing up to be this young man. That nobody can tell me nothing. Like I would just try to overcompensate. I would just try to be that version, at least that version in my head that I thought was right on how to be a man. And eventually I just found myself trying to fit in with other fellows and trying to model after them. And that's essentially me. I tried my best to be like, okay, for example, I tried to be like George, and maybe George has a certain way he talks to people. So I tried to model that.
Yeah.
Or the way he moves, I tried to model that. And going into my teenage years, that's why I felt I started to become, quote unquote, a kind of like a follower in a sense, because it's just like I just took up different elements from other males that I knew and just tried to fit in.
Okay. And Haley, not to get too much in your business, but I assume that you were raised by a single mother. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, mom and grandma, but yeah.
Okay. And do you think that gave you a sense of independence, not having a dad around, or do you think it set you back?
It's an interesting question, just because I feel like if you asked me this years ago, I would definitely say it set me back. That's what I said about in terms of growth and just my mindset kind of changing. I think I could still look back and objectively say that the way it impacted me, especially in like my early adolescence to like young adult years, was very, very intense and similar to Steph. And that's why I like that we're able to talk about it from, like you guys as males, and then like me as a woman. I'm glad we're able to talk about it in that way. But like similar to stuff, I feel like there's just a lot of confusion and instability that you feel. I guess I didn't really think about it as independence, even though again there weren't like two parents in the household, right? So I remember like somebody saying to me once, like, oh, it must be like better, not having both parents, just because you just have like one person to ask. And because people talk about how like mom would say go ask dad, and dad would say go ask mom, and like have stories and stuff. So someone said that to me already, and I was like, I mean, I don't really know if it's better for sure, because I don't think that's what it is. I mean, I would have seen the way, especially when I was like going through a rebellious phase, the way it really took a toll on my mom not having the support of someone else and like a male figure. I do think it set me back in certain ways, but I also feel like now that I'm older, and because of different things I've gone through and my commitment to grow and heal from these experiences, particularly around my dad, yeah, I guess there's a level of independence to it as well. Or there's a level of now seeing the areas of my life where I'm like, I have grown, and this is a testimony. And if my life was different, which of course for a long time I wished it was, I don't want to like assume, but I'm sure we were all in that place at one point, right? Like, I wish my dad was around. I wish I grew up with a dad here. Yeah. But I think, I can look back now and say if my life was different, I probably wouldn't be who I am now and where I am now, or even be able to have certain like testimonies that could help other people and stuff like that. So.
Right. And I love that you mentioned, Haley, about something that I assume as a classmate would have said that to you.
Yeah.
Because so I want to talk about sticking to teenage years. How was it being a secondary school student and having this type of situation at home? Because I spoke about in my blog once about a fellow classmate who jokingly called me a bastard, and that was the first time I ever heard that word and understood what it meant. And I remember I even had another classmate who I think I was in Form 5 at the time, who he was an Indian guy, and he looked at me and he said, I know like all the black people, I know who my father is. And I remember going, like, I just walked into the library because I couldn't even fathom, like, what do I say in response to that? You know what I mean? And at the time, I didn't have a great intimate relationship with my dad. So in some ways, I really did feel like I didn't know who my dad is, you know? So that kind of cut a little deep. Stefan, I'll start with you. What was your experience, like positive or negative, going through secondary school and interacting with other young people with that kind of a history?
I think it was challenging sometimes. I think for me, what made it the most difficult, especially being a teenager, was the fact that, my friends had their fathers. So, like, when my friends had games, like, their fathers would come out and support them. Or, like, on social media, their fathers would have post them when they win or do something like that. So, big them up or, like, make them feel great. And, like, I became so jealous, so angry dealing with them. And I think, thank God, a lot of my major friends never really, how to say, embarrassed me about me not having a father. I think I remember like one incident. I think it was like Form 3, Form 4, where like essentially like I got into an argument. So like basically in secondary school, I was a really angry child. So, like I used to be angry all the time. I used to want to cuss out people. I used to want to fight, although I never get suspended, thank God. But like I was really angry because like I had a lot of anger from the situation. So like I would bring it into school and I would be angry. And like somebody made like a comment in the middle of an argument, and it was like, that's why nobody wants you and thing. And that's why everybody does leave you. It's just like I just remember at that moment I just really wanted to reach out. I just really wanted to like beat him or like just cuss, and like I just remember like that at that point in time, like I just started to cuss. Like I just cuss out everybody in the class, even people who wasn't even involved, just because he was there laughing. I just wanted to cuss everybody, and I did. And then one of my friends, she pulled me out of the class and it was like, okay, you need to chill, and she took me like a walk around the school and like calmed me down. And like that was like one of the biggest loss I ever had in secondary school. It's because of certain comments that they were making like that. Like nobody wants to hear that you're not wanted, especially when you already do feel that way.
Yeah.
Right.
So it definitely was hard sometimes, dealing with that. So it's like I was dealing with the jealousy, I was dealing with some ignorant comments by some ignorant people. And it wasn't a good time, man. I was angry. I was jealous, angry, sad, everything in between. I was just trying to mask it all off and still try to be a good student. I still try to be something that I feel like if my father was in my life, that I would be good enough. So I always wanted to be good at what I did. And because I wasn't really maybe as athletic as I wanted to be, or as whatever else, musically inclined as I wanted to be or whatever, I just decided that I wanted to just be a good student and excel in that. I just wanted to have that proud moment that, that the fathers would post about, that I would see. I wanted to have that proud moment so bad, but it just never came. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, bro. It's weird what could drive us to excellence, like, certain things I don't even think about. Haley, I think you went to an all-girls school. Was that so? Do you share similar experiences, Stefan, or was it different being in school with just girls?
I don't know if they like going to an all-girls school necessarily like affected things. And I mean, in this particular situation, but I think my similarity and like what resonates with me with what he said is when he talks about feeling like he was masking a lot of like what he was feeling and kind of, like there was a lot of anger on the forefront, but it was like what was underneath that. Like I think I relate to that. For me, it wasn't anger though. We having a frank discussion here, right? So it's just gonna be upfront. But I think the hardest time of my life when it comes to how my relationship with my dad and him being absent affected me was definitely my teenage years, for sure. Going into like young adult years. I think coming out of like primary school into high school, there's already this sense of like so many of my friends have their dads. So I have like vivid memories of like going by my best friend's house and like their dads being really kind to me and being really nice and going home and like crying and just wishing that I could have that too. Or just seeing things like, the relationship with like my friend and her dad and seeing things they would do and their cute little inside jokes and, who rubbing his foot and all these nice things. And
Right.
I used to want to be like happy for her or be like, this is so great. But it was always hard to not feel like jealous and I guess a little angry too. I was very lost. I think not having my dad around, amongst other factors. So this wasn't the only thing, but it definitely impacted my identity a lot to the point where I feel like I really didn't have an identity. So my high school experience was very much characterized by just being a follower, wanting to be popular. I think I was kind of looking for self-worth in so many different things. That's really like the main way I could describe it. And I think a big part of it is because I didn't have a male figure in my life. And it wasn't just my dad, similar to like what Steph mentioned. I also grew up with women mainly, right? So yeah, I mean, I didn't have my dad, but I also didn't have any like older male figures in my life. And I think that affected me in the sense that I guess when it comes to like self-worth and self-esteem and like Steph said, I know I'm jumping, but things like seeing dads at graduations and doing different things. Like I was involved in dance a lot when I was younger. So I would have like recitals and competitions and, my mom was always there, always present. But, there's always that aspect where you're like, well, I wish, I wish he was there. I think there was like a lot of instability with me, a lot of inconsistency where I was just looking to find my worth in other people. So I think I really resonate with a lot of what like Steph shared before, because I think my friend group for a while, I was just trying to connect with the popular girls and it was a whole lot of that. I think when I started like, being interested in guys and not books as much, like that part of high school also was really rocky and like tumultuous, because I think a big part of it too is that I didn't have the framework of what a good godly relationship looked like, because I grew up without my dad, right? So I grew up with a single mom. So it wasn't just that aspect of my dad not being present, but it was also not having that framework of seeing a marriage and seeing two people in a relationship, like working through things and all these things. I never had that. So I think I really didn't have a framework for what that looks like and what you're supposed to expect and how you're supposed to be treated like in a relationship and stuff like that. Where like Steph said, his primary like emotion was a lot of like anger and those pent up feelings. I think I was just very confused and very lost for a long time. I think there was definitely a lot of like anger and resentment there, but I don't think those things came out for me until like early adulthood and stuff based on certain experiences. So I think during that time, it was more just feeling lost and just looking everywhere for, like, who am I? And self-worth, all these different things. So yeah.
Okay. Good stuff. Before we get into adulthood, I just want to touch on something that was it's a pretty simple thing, I guess, for the average person, but for me, it was a humongous anxiety-inducing deal. What am I gonna say for Father's Day? Right? That was a big deal for me growing up. I felt like I had to stay off social media. I felt like, at the time, there's a point in time in my life when my mom was married to a guy and he was my stepdad at the time. I know she would encourage me to wish him Happy Father's Day. I don't want to do that. I was like, no, I don't want to, and I really struggled with that a lot. And it's only this year, it was the first year in my entire life, I actually wished my biological dad Happy Father's Day from like a pure heart. I think I did it like once or twice before, and it was always like, it was always like a petty undertone, like Happy Father's Day, like, I guess, like,
Yeah, for sure.
But this year was the first time that it was real and it was genuine. And I remember my mother asking me a couple of years ago, asking me, if not having a father around affected me in any way. And of course, like any other Caribbean child does, when they talk to their mother, I lied and I said no. I was like, I'm cool, I'm fine. But I want to ask you guys, and here I'll start with you, because you mentioned your mother being there, but still feeling a little bit of like I wish that was here. How was that growing up for you? Like, did you ever speak to your mother about it? Was that like a conversation up for discussion or?
Yeah, definitely the second one, definitely the latter. that was not a conversation that we ever had. I think she shied away from that a lot. Honestly, that's a whole other conversation that has a lot to do with culture
Okay.
and background and all these different things. Because there's a lot of like, I think, deep, intense things that not just my mom, but my family generally, there's also a condition to shy away from those things and not speak about topics that could be uncomfortable or that could be controversial. So this was one of those things. And yeah, so when you mentioned that with your mom asking you, like, has it ever affected you? Like, I've never gotten that question. And to be honest, I wish I did, because I feel like I would have definitely been like, yeah, let's talk about that. Sure. I mean, not in any way to make her feel badly, but it's just, I think it was difficult having that experience. And even though my mom was always present and played the role of both parents, I obviously, in that particular aspect, it was hard not feeling supported, as in not feeling like heard or feeling like, and I don't know if like Steph could relate to this, because I'm not sure like with your mom if it was different, but it's kind of like you bottle up a lot and that is kind of not up for discussion. So everything you feel, you just kind of have it inside. I'm very transparent. But when it came to my dad, that was usually never the case with like most people. It would take a lot, like for years and years, people didn't even know my parents were divorced. They just like never heard about my dad and I never mentioned it. But when it comes to the like Father's Day thing,
so please talk about
it. Relate. No, but like I feel like my relationship with Father's Day alone is like a whole thing. But it's because I feel like my mom would like push me a lot to wish my dad happy Father's Day. And the period, like when we were kind of talking and things were okay, I would do it, but like you mentioned, it would be very like grudgingly. Like, okay, well, Father's Day, I guess, because I have to tell you that. But you see, when we stopped talking, and my mom would still kind of encourage me, you should call it dad and wish him happy Father's Day. And I used to be angry, like piss vexed. Because my main thing, and I'm just gonna be brutally honest here, but why am I wishing someone happy Father's Day when this person is essentially like not a father to me? Like I didn't talk to him for the entire year. And now I just call you up and be like, happy Father's Day. Like, no, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, no, it reached a point where it was like level resentment. Did not for like many, many years call him. Like, I refused. I was like, no, this is fake and I'm not doing it. I'm a real one, you know? Yeah, it was just always that push and pull. And I feel like it used to confuse me more because my mom would still be like, that's still your dad. You should still call. And I think when I reached that point of like having a lot of resentment, I was like, why keep saying that? Like, why keep saying dad's still my dad? Like, I understand, like, biologically, you know, okay. But I was like, no, this person is not a father to me, so I'm not going to do that. There's a lot of back and forth with that day. And I still feel, to be very honest with you all, I just don't think it's a day I'll ever, like, really love, to be honest. It's always like, yeah, sure, we can all relate to that. It's always like that underlying, like, okay, can this day finish like faster? That'd be great. Let me not scroll on social media today. Always a bad decision. Yeah.
For sure. What about you, Steph?
My mom was also the type to kind of shy away from it for years. I think it's only when I actually became a teenager and like I started to realize like what he was doing and stuff. I initiated the conversation with her. I was like, okay, it was just a random time we were driving, and I was just like, what happened between you and my father? Why isn't he here? And I don't even know what came over me to ask that. And I just asked and
breathe, boy.
Loaded one time.
Yeah, I don't even know what my mom was probably going through then. I sorry to that woman. I sorry to her. But I was just like, I just wanted to know because, you know, he wasn't there. And like, she started telling me, you know, how it was growing up and stuff. And she told me like her side, and I completely understood, you know, what was going on. But this was still a difficult conversation to have. And I think she realized that, you know, I was getting older and it was time to really have that conversation after years of just not talking about it. She was open to having a conversation. So she did kind of let me know certain things that happened. And she still, I think what was the premise was that she always still wanted me to have that relationship with him. Yeah. So pushed for me to have that relationship with him. And she never let like, you know, her personal feelings towards the situation get involved of me still trying to reach out to him. And, you know, I'm really grateful for that. You know, I'm really, really grateful that she did that. I think that she always wanted me to get my own personal ideas and own personal feelings and never let it be clouded by anything else, which I did. So thankful for that. And to touch on the Father's Day thing, always hated that day.
Felt.
And even when same thing with like Haley and and what you said, Jabari, it's just like she used to ask me to message him, tell him something. I'll be like, ugh, okay, I'll just send a basic message. And that's what I did. And then coming down to like my teenage years, I was just like, I'm not messaging this man on this day. He don't deserve it. He's not a father to me. He's more like a sperm donor. So that is what he'll be treated as. And that literally that was his contact name on my phone.
I used to
like
call him
years.
Whoa.
legit.
I think up
Same.
until last year. Wait, let me just check the contact just to see if I changed it. Yes,
That's so
up
crazy.
until like
And
last
Haley,
year.
I did the same. I didn't change the contacts or anything. My dad was saved as like his name, like his actual name. Like
Right.
still never saved as that.
same.
Yeah.
I had him saved as like, and I'm sorry if you're watching this, but like I had him saved as sperm donor. I'm sorry, it's just like to me, you were just like a sperm donor. Like you planted your seed and that was it. You left your seed. You didn't want to grow. You didn't want to nourish. You didn't feed it. You didn't water it. You didn't do anything to the seed. So the seed had to grow on its own with the help of, well, other things of the soil, I guess.
Yeah. That was real deep. Could I just say, not to cut you off, but
that was great.
Jabari, you like that was a real deep comparison. That made me emotional hearing that.
He didn't deserve it. And part of me, even now, while we're okay, I think I didn't even message him on the actual day this year. I messaged him the day after and I just said, I really hope that you had a good Father's Day, because for me, I just don't like to be on social media on Father's Day.
Oh,
I get disheartened, I get sad. And I understand that some people, always feel that Father's Day should be for fathers. And, if you have problems with your fathers, don't bring it out on this day. But it is so triggering. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand how triggering that day is to me.
Very
and like I understand and I respect that, people love their father, and I will never take that away from them. Never. But for me, don't expect me to be liking up a set of posts or be so active on a day, because I hate it. It still triggers me, it still makes me sad, it still makes me think back. And it's something that I'm working on. I know it's not right. I know it's not right to carry on these feelings, but
it's also valid.
Yeah, it's just hard for me, and it just brings back a lot of dark memories. So on a day, I don't like to be on social media. I just like to put on like a set of movies to watch or something, just to take my mind off of it. I just don't like to celebrate it. And even with my stepfather, which I do love him, and I would buy him gifts and stuff for Father's Day, but like that's literally it. Like I would go give him the gift and Happy Father's Day, and then that's it. Like I don't like to celebrate the day. But I still appreciate my current stepfather right now for what he has done. But it's just like, it's just hard. And I think he kind of understands that it is hard for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, Haley and I are both just like echoing the sentiments again.
Literally, like, yeah. No, it is and triggering was the right word. I didn't mention that, but it's definitely is triggering. I hate being on social media on that day. And just like Steph, I tend to do a lot of like, okay, let me just get through this day. Let me watch some movies.
Exactly.
Let me, like self-care kind of day, because it's always a lot. It brings up a lot, I think.
Yeah. I think that's such a good way to look at it, because I felt the same. Like, let me just get through this day. Let me just get through this, period or whatever.
Is it only 1 p.m.? Why? Sorry.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Like, how many movies can I watch in 24?
Yeah. Also, me like trying. I don't know if y'all have this experience, like me scrolling on social media. Obviously, now I'm like, let me not even do that. But just trying not to be bitter, but also because it's like it is a day to celebrate dads, and there are so many amazing like fathers out there. But then I'm also just like my like high resentment period, y'all. Oh my God, okay, we get it. You love your dad, Jesus Christ. Like, seriously. Meanwhile, these fathers, they're going all out, all out. But like, it's like, oh, your dad is our protector, okay. Being honest.
Like, I even remember that I was one of those persons that I posted my mom for Father's Day because I just so wanted to post stuff. But I realized that that was wrong to do. I shouldn't have done that on that day. Appreciate her for her day and don't bring it in for Father's Day. Like I was so bitter that day. I just wanted to have something because I just felt like all the people around me had something and I didn't. So I was like, ugh.
Same. Yo, quick tea moment. I promise, Shabari, this is literally like a few seconds long story. But
Take it down, take it down.
I did the same thing as Steph one year where I posted my mom on Facebook. I think I actually probably did it more than 1 year. I definitely don't do that anymore because I think I have opinions about that in terms of, it is a day for dads and I understand that. But again, high resentment period. My dad hates you. And I posted my mom and I was like, oh, my mom is like best dad playing both roles. And my dad is not on Facebook, but he was dating a woman at the time who apparently found my post and showed him. And he reached out to me like months after and he was like mad. Like, oh, so your mom is your dad too? Like, what am I? Blah, 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 blah. I also got like some backlash on that post because people were like, oh, but this is a day for dads and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, maybe I need therapy, but also no thanks.
Oh my gosh. Was that like how did that conversation
with him? Oh, yeah, I was just like, yeah, all right. So you saw it, great stuff. Because we weren't even, I can't remember how come he even reached out. And he seemed so hot and bothered. And in my head, I was like, but are you really? Like, why? I mean, I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me why you would be bothered about that. I get it's probably hurtful though, but still, like,
yeah.
Because he's like, I'm still alive. I'm here. I was like, are you?
Are you really?
Oh, yeah.
You're alive, but are you here? Are you present?
So it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Stefan, you spoke about, a seed being planted and like the seed growing up. No thanks to the planter, but to the soil and to the elements around them. I think that's a nice segue into like young adulthood. So let's like 1920, around that period, 21. How did those teenage tantrums transition into young adulthood?
I think so I started to calm down by like Form 6. And like Form 6, I started to really realize that there is something wrong with me. Like this is wrong. Like I shouldn't be angry like this. I shouldn't be holding in. Like I was a person I used to hold a lot of grudges. So like a lot of people used to hold a lot of grudges against. I was just like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be doing this. And then, I think when I was like around 19 is when I now started university. I believe. You're coming out of Form 6 to start in university. Yeah, I think that's around that age, right? I come out of Form 6 and I was like, okay, I have a problem, but I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to put it in the back of my mind. Going to go here, fresh start, whatever. But what happened was when I moved to university, I started to live on my own, which is the first time I've ever lived on my own. Things just started to come up. I just realizing that a lot of patterns, a lot of my interactions with people now wasn't healthy. Like it still have like a lot of unresolved things that I just never used to go through. And I remember during this period of time is when like my friend Simeon kind of forced me into IVCF. So like I remember just going there and like meeting all these people and meeting these guys like Davian and Dana Devonish, and I just remember them coming to me and really embracing me and all this stuff, right? And then after a while, they just started to dig deeper into my life, get to know me, and like find out things about me. And like I've never had a guy or a male be so invested in getting to know me and really holding me accountable and really being there for me. Yes, I had my friend Simeon, which he was a very stronghold throughout the years and he helped me a lot. But I just thought that these guys were like persistent and like were, there. And like I started to open up to them about like what happened with me, especially with my father as well. And like I just see them just starting to hold me accountable to certain things and my actions, and like I couldn't rage out anymore. I couldn't be holding grudges like that anymore. I couldn't be doing that. And I just realized that, okay, I really do need help. I did do therapy once in like secondary school when it was getting really bad. I did convince my mom to carry me therapy once. But like in university, I actually started to seriously take therapy seriously. And I started to go therapy sessions in UWI. Thank God they were free because therapy is costing a lot. I started to take advantage of that and I started to see myself starting to change and realizing that in my adulthood, if I really want to be this man that I've been trying to be since a teenager and trying to model after, I have to start to take up certain steps and get certain healing. And I realized that I had a lot of flaws that I just been masking, and I needed to start to progress. So university, during that young adulthood phase was beginning, because I'm still a young adult essentially. But like during that phase, it was like a big transition for me. So I started to realize that in order for me to be the man that I need to be, I need to deal with stuff. And I started to do it piece by piece. Still working through it all now. It's never easy, but piece by piece I started to do it.
Well, you know, healing is a continuing process. So I don't think we will ever, I think purely because of all the time that was lost and was spent in distance and separation and resentment and all kind of things, I don't think there would ever be like this 100% perfected relationship. I feel like it's a continuing process, you know, as you go along. Haley, what about you? How was that period going into like your early 20s?
All right. My experience was, I guess, similar in a way to Steph's. Like I mentioned earlier, I definitely think my early 20s was like the height of, like I said, teens and early 20s, but early 20s is where I really realized, like I started to have that awareness of like, oh crap, like Steph said, like things bad, like we need help out here, you know?
Like you?
Yeah. And I mean, that's a whole other story, but I think it had a lot to do with like decisions I was making, right? Decisions I was making in friendships, in life, with guys, all those things. And I realized a lot of this was because of what I mentioned, where I was just confused and lost and really hurt. And, you know, always wished that I had a dad around. And I feel like there was so much that I felt I was lacking. And for a long time, I was focused on that, like hyper focused. Like I've lacked so much, you know, like I think I really saw myself as a victim, honestly, for a long time. And yeah, I'll link back to that. But I mean, 10 out of 10 don't recommend, because at the end of the day, you reach a point where you're like, oh, wait, I'm my own person and I have to take responsibility for my actions, you know? Because for a long time, I think I just saw it as, yeah, well, of course I'm making dumb decisions. I didn't have a dad. Legit. I used to tell people like especially when it came to like guys and whatnot, like I have daddy issues. So yeah, that's just, you know, like it's almost like that was my identity for a while. Like, yeah, I'm just a classic like girl with daddy issues, and that's just how it is. But I blamed a lot of stuff on that. Definitely blamed a lot on that. But cycling back to, so with my dad, things got substantially worse for him and I would say around like, yeah, it's probably when I was like 19 when I started university, like out of high school. A big thing I'll be honest about with my dad, slightly hoping he never sees this, to be honest, but if you do, just speak him the truth, yo. One thing that was really difficult for me with my dad, beyond just him not being around and all these things, is my dad definitely leads a lifestyle that is difficult to respect. I'll leave it at there. He definitely led a life, and still does, where it's difficult to respect that. And as a young woman growing up and still trying to visit now and again, not as often, and spending, I would try to go and spend like July, August and stuff there. And I guess like the things I would be exposed to, it was horrifying and damaging. Again, especially as a young woman, but I think woman or man, right? It was just hard to see, just a lot in terms of like his treatment of women and that sort of lifestyle. And I think my view of males for a long time was really impacted. And not just my view of males, but also my view of what a relationship should be and how I should be treated and these different things. I think I definitely settled for a lot less, and all those things with like self-worth and stuff was a big deal. But yeah, we reached like a breaking point, I would say, when I was like 19 or 20, where we fell out really, really badly and we didn't speak for years. It was a really intense situation. Again, it had to do with stuff with his lifestyle, where I kind of finally took a stand. I think a long time in my teenage years and stuff, I used to try to protect him and lie for him because I was asked to do that. And I was like, well, it's my dad, so why not? But yeah, it would usually be, of course, to the detriment of other people and like good people and genuine people. And, you know, I would just try to cover up for lots of his stuff, and I reached a breaking point with that, and it was horrible. It was a horrible time. So yeah, that's why I said I think my early 20s was challenging with that, because then our relationship was just completely fractured. It was fractured for years, but it was just like there was no relationship for a long time. When that happened, I was like, and I promise y'all, I'm just speaking up front, say I think I would have shared this with both of y'all at some point. Because this is around when Jabari, I would have probably met you like a while after, and well, Steph would have like known at some point. I definitely was like, I'm never forgiving my father, and we're just never going to have a relationship again. And I was content with that. I was content. Well, I thought I was. I was like, I'm good, because I reached a point where I legit, guys, was like, I'm indifferent. That's how I feel like these stages went. I feel like I went through so much resentment for a while that I reached a point where I was like, I'm indifferent and I don't care. Like, and that was huge for me because, you know, hard to not care and be detached. But I was like, no, I don't care about him. It doesn't matter, you know. I was like, yeah, he's just not going to be at my wedding. I'll never forgive him. And I thought I was justified. I was like, this is valid. Like, it's okay. And when people would mention sometimes like, oh, but Christian and forgive, I'm like, no. But this situation is different. It's like, don't worry. God understands, I'm sure. Disclaimer, that's not true, by the way, guys. Just letting everybody know, just in case you think, you're not, just in case you're following along with me and you're like, yes, yeah, that's not true. So I'll just plug really quick before I like wrap it up. But Stefan mentioned IV, and I was glad that he did. IVCF, sorry for those of you who don't know. So when I was in university, I was also in IV, and you know, it's interesting because I feel like the guys that I met there and the standard that I saw, and this is also like a shout out to you too as well, just because I feel like this was across the board, but generally, I just being honest with y'all, I was like, wow, so decent guys exist, huh? That's legit where I was at. I just being honest with y'all. I was like amazed. I didn't realize, to be very honest with y'all, that this was a thing. I was like, oh, these are like decent guys, you know, that uphold that uphold like values of, you know, like, oh, and like commitments and stuff, like what? Like that's a thing, you know, like, well, you know, like malfunction, what is it, you know, like wait, like stability, what, like a concept.
Who knew?
A lot of like the girls in my life in IV like were very intentional about talking to me about stuff around my dad, and a lot of them also had very similar experiences, y'all. It's heartbreaking to know how many people have such similar experiences with regard to their relationship with their dad. But I'll just be honest, it was also weirdly comforting at a point, because I kind of just felt like, oh, I'm not the only one. Like, I'm not the only one that feels these things. And
especially
stuff
when
like,
you've been surrounded by like people who
had
their fathers.
Exactly. Who had their dads around for such a long time, and you kind of seeing that. And then you meet people where it's like, yeah, no, I've had similar experiences. Like, I found such comfort for a long time. And like my talks with like Steph, because I was always getting emotional, because I was like, wait, somebody like really genuinely understands like how I feel, you know, and had such a similar experience to me. And I mean, it's heartbreaking because you don't want that for anyone, but at the same time, like, oh, well, guess I'm not alone. Like I said, I think when you have a lot of these issues, as you start to mature, and also not to get like super spiritual, but we're Christian here, I think as you begin to like submit more to God, and you understand that love for God means like maturity in different areas and what that means, it's hard to ignore. It's hard to ignore a lot of the behaviors that you have, and it's hard to ignore a lot of the like poor decisions and stuff like that. And I think for a long time I was trying to do that. I was in leadership and stuff, and still having a lot of like deep-seated issues with my dad. And again, we weren't even talking, but it was just a lot of hurts and resentments I had. And I tried to brush it off, and I was like, I'm okay, I'm all right, I'm good. But I think these things really tend to come out in intimate relationships, to be honest. I think they come out in a lot of different ways, but especially in like intimate relationships and friendships and stuff, you just can't hide it. You can't overlook it forever. You can't just keep like, no, I'm good. It's all good.
Yep.
I don't care about him. Like, it definitely comes out, especially when you haven't addressed the issues. You haven't dealt with it. You haven't tried to seek any form of healing. So yeah, I think it just got to that point. Just to be frank, yeah, I was in a relationship with a really, really great guy, really decent. And I think a lot of my issues were coming out. And for the first time, it felt like this is something that was really serious. And that, you know, would be going all the way and stuff like that. And I kind of realized, I was like, oh, am I actually going to let this crash and burn? because of all these issues that I haven't dealt with. And
Mm.
that's just kind of the point that it reached where I kind of saw a lot of stuff coming out. And again, it had a lot to do with like difficulty trusting and commitments and things I mentioned before, where you just didn't have this framework of a stable relationship. So you have no idea what it looks like, you know? And I think honestly, being a product of divorce, you just naturally have certain, you know what I mean? Like I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll understand. You just naturally have certain things that you just think goes, you know?
Mhm.
So for a while, I was just like, well, things end. When people argue, it ends. Like that's just how it goes, you know?
Wow.
That's what I've seen, that's what I know. And I think I reached that point where, like I said, in maturing, I was like, well, we need to deal with this. Like, this is a problem. And it took a really big push for me to get myself to therapy. I made appointments to do therapy and backed out more than once. And it was because I was not ready to unearth the stuff that I knew would come up. Because, like I told you all, I told myself for years that I was okay. For years, I was like, I am cool going through the rest of my life with no relationship with my father. And I was content with that, y'all. I was content. Yeah, and it reached that point.